What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of JOS Talks. Today we have an exciting episode with none other than Michael. What's up?
What's going on? Glad to be here.
So, yeah, Michael, today we'll be speaking on behalf of a grad student. And as you know, in this series, we invite youth with different experiences and identities to give us the hard details and the cold facts behind what's happening. So, super excited to talk a little bit about grad school. So, let's get right into it. As always, I'm your host, Ahmed. Number one, Michael. So, give us the deets on what university and program are you currently in?
I'm at York University in the socio-legal studies program, PhD. Yeah.
All right, very nice. This is York University in Toronto, Canada, just for the listeners out there.
Yep.
So, to get to this stage, what was sort of the brief summary of your educational path? How did high school, undergrad, master's, or whatever else go?
hmm Yeah, I think I had a less than conventional route to grad school. I think like most students from my background, I was sort of streamed into sort of the applied program. I think some students, I think they discontinued that, but um, back in the mid 2000s, that was very much a practice, and it was rather difficult to get into university once they sort of put you on that applied stream. So I actually went to college for a year, and then transferred to York after that. And then I kind of liked the university experience, and I decided to do my master's right after. And then I took a bit of a break, and then went back to do my PhD, for various reasons. The primary reason being I just really enjoyed the classroom and just learning. And there was some fascinating research that I myself wanted to do, and thought the university was perhaps the best place to do that. But yeah, but speaking frankly, it was a bit of a circuitous route that I took to get to this level. Is certainly not the most traditional form, but yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here.
All right, very nice. It's always nice to hear less than orthodox ways people get
Yeah,
into where they are, right? It's not always a straight circuit or a straight route.
yeah.
Just to segue on something you already mentioned, but why did you
Mhm.
choose this particular current university and program? What some fascinating points about it?
That's a good question. I was looking at a few programs, mostly looking at traditional disciplines, or what are called traditional disciplines, like political science, sociology. Those big those common disciplines. But in all honesty, they didn't really excite me all that much, and other universities that I looked at didn't really wasn't I didn't feel it was conducive to my own interest. This particular program, and the faculty within the program, was something that I found quite interesting, primarily due to the fact that it was such an eclectic and diverse group of faculty. Right, we have faculty from various discipline all sort of coming to form this program. So there was a higher diversity of opinion, of thought, of research interests, of methodology, and so on and so forth. So I think that was the key reason why I chose to do this program, is because it was very much interdisciplinary. Um, and the students within the program also came from a variety of disciplines, right? We had students come from criminology. I personally come from political science. We have students from sociology, et cetera, et cetera. So it was also a more exciting classroom experience for me as well, right? And and yeah, I think it's just the eclectic nature of the discipline, and of the program, that that was the reason why I chose this particular program.
All right, very nice. I think that gives some thinking points to the young listeners out there. If you're
Mhm.
considering grad school, what are things you should look out for and what, would benefit you in these programs and institutions? Next, observing, the process and going through it, what would you say are some general requirements kids should know about getting into grad schools? And then more the nitty gritty, what skills and sort of hard skills and soft skills should potential candidates try to develop?
Well, in terms of what is required, obviously that's going to vary from program to program. But in my experience, what I found was key wasn't so much how good of a student you are in your undergrad, although that's of course very important, but it was more about compatibility of research. By that I mean, is your research interest something that is that goes with that particular program? So are there faculty who may guide you in that research, or are there professors with the same or similar research interests which may help you develop your own research question and methods further, right? So I think when looking at grad school, surely you should look for what is required. And it's hard to give sort of a concrete answer because all programs are different. But I think I would really gear my focus towards how compatible your research question is to the available resources of that particular department to which you want to apply to. Um, in terms of skills that one ought to develop, I suppose the most obvious one is doing research, particularly academic research, right? So if you plan on going to grad school, learning how to access databases, how to create citations, and some of those minute details that I don't think enough undergrads really understand, right? I mean, ITA for a second year class, and I see these errors all the time where students are just not able to do simple academic research for an essay or something like that, right? Which if you don't develop those skills at the undergrad level, it's going to be rather difficult to all of a sudden learn all of those skills at the master's level, right? So I think learning how to do academic research, learning how to do literature reviews, learning how to cite properly, and learning the different styles of citations, and I think those details might seem minute, but they are quite profound, and they can really dictate how well you do, in your own research, right? So I think it's a really good fundamental skills that one should develop early on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It sounds like a lot of it is sort of left to young people to learn on their own or go figure
Yeah.
it out by doing it yourself. That
Yeah.
that really brings me sort of to this question of, students that once you get into grad school, and obviously you're speaking to your own experience more than others, but do you feel like
Mm.
what's around you, do you think grad students have a good work-life balance? And the ancillary to that, what's the social scene like at your university or department?
Mhm. Yeah, well, the first question, uh, I'd have to say not entirely, right? I mean, I certainly, it's hard to speak for others, but establishing a work-life balance in any profession or in any kind of job is always difficult. But I think it's especially there are some unique difficulties to having a work-life balance when it comes to grad school, right? Because it's not a traditional 9 to 5 occupation. um, it is something that sort of you take with you, even when you go home, right? So it's a real difficulty. I mean, I struggle with it even today, right? It's establishing a good work life balance. Um, so I mean, I'd have to say no, but it is something that I think we all should work on, regardless. And if you do get into grad school, um, like if I were to sort of tell my like first year self, I would say, set a time aside just for sort of your own personal time to do, the things that you enjoy, right? Whether it's hobbies or, just sitting and reading something or whatever, right? Or play sports, whatever you like. So just, make sure you set time aside, right? And if you sort of occupy your mind, with school, 24/7, I think that's a good recipe for burnout, really. And I seen it happen. So yeah, I mean, balancing work and life is so important, and not often well done. And if I can just sort of make a more grandiose point, if I could, um, I think there's this culture, particularly in the West, which sort of pushes us to achieve excellence and to work hard and sleep less. And, it's sort of become our own cultural ethos here. But I think that is sort of quite detrimental to a lot of young people who sort of approach everything, including school, with that kind of mentality, and they just sort of burn themselves out, right? So, you know, please, whether or not um, you write the best dissertation or the best thesis, it's still, your life is way bigger than that. So, make sure you prioritize yourself and your family, over everything. So yeah, I think it's not a subject that is not talked about enough. I feel like. Um, but when it comes to your second question about the social scene, in my own department, uh, and remember, this is before COVID lockdown, when we had classrooms in person.
Right. Long,
It was
long
a
ago.
Yeah, long time ago, right? Feels like centuries ago. But yeah, it was a very cool, very much close knit kind of community where we were friends right from the get go. The entire cohort, the master students and the PhD students, we would take the same classes, and we were able to form really close bond and close friendships, that extended beyond the classroom, right? And it was really, really great. And I think some programs might have that, some might not, but my program happened to be very much a close knit community with strong camaraderie and togetherness, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think we should really highlight that last point about work-life balance and the pressures. That
Yeah.
sort of reminded me for one of our blog entries for JOS, on Just Our Stories blogspot.com. One of the youth wrote about work and productivity culture, and how
Mhm.
now among young people there's a lot of pushback now against that whole work and productivity culture. And that was one thing that just sort of my memory jogged there when you're mentioning it. So it's good
Yeah.
that it is being critiqued among, younger people and what they're being set up to do. So
Right.
talking about that's a great segue to the next question. And I know that often part of the balance is the economic aspect, TAs. And one of those aspects is the TA-ship, which for people don't know out there, grad students have to do these sort of odd jobs where they get paid aside from, because obviously you just don't get paid for being a student. And
Right.
so I wanted to ask you, for people that are curious out there, how much do grad students TA, and what is that experience like for TAing, and what are some other ways that grad students make ends meet?
Yeah, I mean, TA is I think is a requirement for well, it depends on the program, but at York is usually a requirement for the PhD level, and some programs demand it at the master's level as well. In terms of like what it actually entails or how much work you're expected to do, it depends on how big the class is. But for me, I had to TA an undergrad class, with hundreds of students, and I personally had two classes or two sections of the same class, each about 20-25 students, so 50 students total. So the task essentially would be for me to lead tutorials, as well as grade papers and exams, right? So the tutorials are, for me, kind of a fun experience, right? So you get to go over the lecture material with the students. You get to go over the reading material for that particular class, and you have to, in a sense, lead a discussion among the ideas, right? So I mean, a lot of TAs do it, have their own style, but this is really a time, I think, where you can engage the students and have a discussion about various subjects. So I think that the whole discussion aspect of being a TA is pleasant. It's a learning experience. You learn, and you also get to teach. You also get to share ideas, and um, it's one of the most rewarding aspects of being a TA, right? Engaging with ideas and with the students and so forth. Um, and you are expected to do some grading as well, which can be quite tiring and a bit tenuous at times. But yeah, but that does come with the job, and the way that TAs make ends meet is, besides from the TA, there are some fundings that the university provides depending on the program, and students usually also apply for external and internal scholarship, like SHIRK, um, and other provincial scholarships as well, to help in their studies. But yeah, but I think I know some grad students also work part time, while going to school full time, which is a difficult thing to do, but there are students who do that as well. But and that kind of reminds me of the first question, right? When it comes to looking up schools and requirements and so forth, is looking at what the kind of available funding that the university provides, or the department, the program provides, right? Various departments and various universities have different funding packages. So be sure to have a full understanding of exactly what kind of funding is available before applying, or before accepting, if you are admitted. Yeah.
Right. I think that's really insightful, for young people to really keep their eyes open to the opportunities, even if
Right.
those are not only educational, but also economic opportunities. So let's move on to sort of the next question very quickly. Hindsight being 2020, aside from citations and all that jazz, what do you wish you would have known or been prepared for entering into grad school?
Well, I think it would be developing a more consistent reading habit when it comes to academic literature. I think in grad school we're introduced to brand new ideas and so forth, but most of the text that you're asked to read has been available for a long time. And if I could go back, I would read my undergrad stuff more carefully,
Right.
and more astutely, than I did in my grad school, right? Because sometimes you find yourself reading the same thing, right? I read this, like, for example, I'm looking at this Foucault book that I read for twice now, for three times, and it's also a book that I read in undergrad, and I was like, oh man, I wish I had read this in undergrad, but did it more carefully. So when it comes to like all these sort of canonical texts that you would encounter in undergrad, just be sure to read it more carefully and more thoughtfully, and not just read it, just so you can get an A on a paper and then just move on, right? So yeah, I think I would develop like a more consistent and more fastidious reading habits.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, for the youngins out there.
Yeah.
I heard that often people in grad school, they need sort of a big research idea and whatnot, and they're pivoting all the time. So I just wanted to ask you, is the research project, the big one you're currently working towards, is this one that you would have had in mind a few years ago? Did it change along the way, and what sort of pushed it, those changes, if so?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. And I remember, when I was doing my master's, I had this, research proposal, and which is something you have to submit when you're applying. And when I look at my thesis, it looked completely different, right?
Right.
And I think one of the things to expect is like the your proposal or your initial research question or recent or your research idea or whatever is not going to look the same once the actual project is done, right? The questions might change, the data might reflect something different from your hypothesis and so forth, right? So it's bound to change. It's inevitable, right?
Mm.
Um, so it is sort of, I would urge you to expect that and not be sort of shocked or disappointed, when it takes a turn. Um, yeah, for me, the research question I had, was very different from my initial proposal, right? Um, my initial proposal, or when I first thought about the idea of my research, I was more concerned about how, you know, university campuses as a space, as a political space, as a social space, were sort of a key um, spaces that can provide insights as to how social movements are developed and shaped, right? And what role in society that they have, right? And my research was going to be about some sort of historical analysis and comparative analysis as to how universities have shaped social movements and what ramification that has.
Mm.
But it kind of changed, right? Because the events and the context of our society, changed, right? So universities all of a sudden became sort of this hot contested spaces where this unique question of free speech was beginning to emerge in a kind of different way than in previous times, right? So I was then I began to be a lot more interested in how it is that free speech is understood. What are its proper contours? How do we regulate speech, and particularly how do we regulate that speech within campuses themselves, and what possible ramification does that have for society at large, legally, socially, and politically as well. So it changed definitely from how social movements are formed
Mm.
to uh, to looking at the university space as a key insight that can tell us a lot about the nature of speech regulation, right? And what possible insight that can provide for understanding larger debates around free speech, right? So, just to sort of, long-winded way of saying how it changed from one thing to the other, right? And I think that's going to be inevitable regardless of what kind of research you're doing. So yeah, just be open to, having your research question changed, having your analysis change. And even when you do like preliminary literature reviews, your research interests and questions might change as well, right? So, I think it's a good idea to be prepared for for all those variables to change. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like being adaptable and open-minded
Mm,
are some qualities that would be fundamental to doing all right in grad school.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I'm gonna bundle the next couple of questions. We're almost at the end here for our listeners. I'm gonna bundle the next two. What is one thing you would say you love most about grad school? And on the flip side, what is one thing that's not so pleasant about the grad school experience?
Well, the first question is let me give you my top two, like
All right.
1 and 1A. Um, One would be sort of the camaraderie and sort of the community that's available, particularly in my program, right? I happen to have like a really good supervisor and a good collection of faculty and staff who are so helpful. And of course, the other students. whom I've sort of built friendships with, and they're just lovely people, and it's sort of an amazing communal experience, right? And secondly, or at least 1A would be, being a TA, right? I think I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would. Engaging with students, uh, you know, um, reading their papers, engaging with their ideas, in discussions and so forth. Um, I think has been an extraordinarily pleasant experience, an amazing learning opportunity for me. Right, I learned so much from them, just by being their TA, right? And I think those two will be the things that I enjoy the most. The thing that I don't enjoy so much is, the workload can be sometimes overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you may have, we were just talking, off camera about, comprehensive exams, which can be quite stressful. Depending on, at the PhD level, there are most PhD programs have what's called a comprehensive exams, where you are expected to read a litany of books and be, examined orally, and it can be quite daunting, right? And it can, it takes hours and hours to, prepare, to take those exams, right? Of course, at the end it's going to be, very valuable to you, but the workload can be, it may seem insurmountable at times. Um, but I think sometimes the workload can be rough, and also because another thing that I don't like so much would be sort of the time that it's so much. It is very time consuming, right? So if you want to, do a part-time job or whatever, I mean, you can, and some students do, but it is extraordinarily difficult to find the time for, for a side hustle or what have you, right? So yeah, I think the time consuming nature of grad school uh, is is less than pleasant. I'm not going to say I hate it,
Right.
because this is a unique opportunity, and it is profound privilege. But yeah, the workload and the time consuming nature is can be rough at times.
Yeah, that's insightful, and it's important for people listening out there that they know, what it entails. It's not all fun and games,
All right.
and
Yeah.
prestige are profound. Um,
Yeah.
Good. That brings me sort of to the final question, or it's really two parts. The first
Yeah.
is, people they achieve this, go to grad school. What are some things they usually do after grad school, profession wise or unique? Like, what's something unique I could do if I went to grad school per se? And what are some of your own personal future plans and use for, having this qualification?
Um, Yeah, it's a good question. I think depending on sort of what level of grad school you complete, um, for example, in most social sciences, I know of a few students who sort of go into policy work, or work for think tanks, and research institutes. Those kinds of places are are a good destination for grad schools. But when you get to the PhD level, I think the most common aspiration is usually to just stay in academia. So most people in my program, and the alumni from my program, usually go into academia, and go into teaching or go into research. Um, so that's usually the most common stream. I myself one day would like to go or stay in academia as well. Uh, Not for the simple reason that I just find the classroom the most exciting place in the world, and I don't think you can get that experience. Well, maybe I should not be so presumptuous, but I don't think you can get that experience as well in other places as you can in the academy, right? So, I mean, that's my personal ambition, very very high ambition, I might say.
Right. All right. Fantastic. That's good to know. And definitely for all the listeners out there, we hope that you've found it insightful, this conversation about grad school and what it entails and the different things you can possibly look forward to if you do partake down that path. Also, one more thing I may add, some people do, it's not PhD, but often after they do their master's, I hear there's a 10-20% pay raise, whether they're working in government or corporate. So there is often a straight payoff that they do it for. Just so people out there know. Other than that, you can always check out these episodes on our Spotify, just our stories, JOS Youth at Spotify, or just our stories.ca has all the socials and whatnot. Follow, like, subscribe. And once again, thank you, Michael, for coming today and shedding some light on grad school for us.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
And we hope to catch everyone on the next episode. Later.
Peace.